Good evening, everyone. It's Monday, January 10th, 2022. Time for episode 7 of The Last Admiral. We'll begin near the top of page 53. Some notable events today in history. In 1920, the Treaty of Versailles takes effect, officially ending World War I. In 1929, the first Adventures of Tintin comic book is published. And in 1946, the first General Assembly of the United Nations opens. Pat Benatar, George Foreman, and Rod Stewart were all born on this day, January 10th. Okay. The 11th Fleet has begun their voyage. And the last command from the previous page: man the oars, head at the half-stroke. Drummer, helmsman, guide us through the channel. We row for the open sea. Acklon's eyes were keen and blue, unlike the eyes of his ancestors, and at least for his generation, they could see as well by the light of day as they could in the deepest dark. Searching the channel ahead for any threat to his fleet, he found none. The way was clear. The channel was true and deep and well marked by anchored buoys bobbing in their places. Gulls drifted with the wind, inspecting the ships, ever watchful for the promise of food, while the afternoon sun shone grandly above the clear sky. The tide was up and nearly full. Gentle waves slapped the stony shores of Shang-Sun. J.W. read the sign all too well. The calm before the storm, Admiral? Indeed, Acklon replied, but we've weathered mighty storms. This one's different. I can feel it, all the way to the soles of my boots. How fares Captain Conrad? He wants to mutiny and sail with us, sir, J.W. informed. All of the men think the worst of it. 4 ships left behind to guard the port, sir. In addition, 10 more in dry dock. It's appalling. Everybody knows that the Academy alone has 20 corsairs moored and ready at a moment's notice. We can smell the rats, sir. One might think that our leaders are confident of our ability and wise in conserving our strength. Or a sailor might fear the worst, Admiral. Don't worry, Acklon asserted. I feel it too. We will be sorely tested on this voyage, and I know that Captain Conrad will do the right thing when the time comes. We should heave to, then, Admiral? For by God, my saddle-worn ass has never seen a more beautiful day on Tempest to fill a sail. Heave to, Acklon commanded. J.W., the ship is yours until we reach the assembly area. I wish to inspect the fleet from the crow's nest. Aye, aye, sir, J.W. replied. Put your backs into it, Marines. Steady ahead on the drum. Walking the deck, he inspected the ship and his sailors and worked hard to boost their spirits. We row for the open sea, and if only my father could feel these fair winds on this fine day. It was a cue, a phrase, the start of the rowers' chant, and every sailor in the 11th knew it well. He sees it, and looking back to shore, J.W. recited as he walked the deck, to our wives and our children, who we may never see, never again, a day no more. If only they could feel this wind. They feel it. And there on the pier stand 3 little girls and their fathers are sailing off to war. Their tears they cry, for their daddies who may soon die. I wish that they could feel this wind. They feel it. J.W.'s voice rang out, challenging the wind and the sea before them with its quality. Sailors are we. To sail, we turn our hearts to the sea. Family, country, memory, only we can ride the wind. Will we? Will we ride the wind? Ride the wind, they sang. And just so, they rowed, not so far, past the jetty and around the point, awaiting their admiral's command to ship oars and ready the sails. Acklon climbed easily, accounting for the list and lurch of the ship. He reached the crow's nest high atop the mainmast. Standing firmly with his thighs braced against the half rail, he drew his glass and inspected his small retinue of ships. There were 10 original fleets in the Dragonian Navy. Centuries of warfare had proven a need for swifter and more flexible operations at sea to combat subversive and piratical enemies. In order to thwart these terror-style attacks, the Queen commissioned the 11th Fleet. Made up of an assortment of 29 ships, it was composed of 9 armed merchantmen, 8 captured privateer frigates, and 12 dragon ships. Commanded by the most cunning and capable officers, each seized ship was maintained in its original form, thus creating a small fleet of vessels with no apparent flag or allegiance, capable of operating in any waters at will around the globe and supported by a large retinue of warships. 14 ships followed in the wake of Terribilis that day, including 4 of the armed merchantmen, 3 privateers, and 8 dragon ships, newly outfitted with 3 masts. Behind them, 4 more of his dragon ships sat at anchor, guarding 10 of their privateers in dry dock and awaiting much-needed repairs. Captain Virgil Conrad remained behind to command them while they were away. He and his crew stood remorsefully on deck as their admiral sailed away without them. He saw Virgil staring back at him through his own spyglass, and he saluted. They saluted each other, with the backs of their hands showing, as Dragonia had, as yet, never been officially defeated in war. Captain Conrad then held his clenched fist high above his head, an action of utmost respect between the members of the Dark Alpha race. Lowering his glass, Acklon stood looking back, holding now the rail as the ships began to meet the incoming sea. His vision was so acute that even without his glass he could still see the expression on Virgil's face. It was neither sadness nor indifference. It was naught but dread. Shaking within himself, his will became steel. He was their admiral. His small fleet was ready and able. Captain Norris hailed him from Invincible, his first armed merchantman, and Captain Carradine rode the bow of the Wandering Monk. Commander Wayne stood upon the decks of the Green Beret, and Lord Douglas upon the Viking. All was well enough for now. Descending the ladder to the main deck, he removed his jacket and took over for one of his young marines at Nor. Surely you won't rob your captain of a little exercise, Ensign Green? Admiral, he simply said before handing over his post. Stand by on deck, Ensign. You are temporarily relieved. Aye, sir, Green replied. J.W., Acklon called. Yes, Admiral, he asked. Inform the ship's mage that I will meet with him once we are under sail. I will tell Lord Gax at once, sir. See to it. Heaving to, his muscles soon filled with blood, his arms rippling with the exertion of handling a huge 3-manned oar. It was common to see him there with his crew, and when he could, he would row as hard as any among them. He stayed until he was ready to give the order. Steady oars, steady, ship oars, and ship, with J.W. always echoing his commands exactly. Their actions took place on the second calling, in order to ensure that every rower was prepared and able to act in unison. Thereby it was the first mate's call, and not the admiral's, upon which they acted. Ready the sails, J.W. commanded. Sailors leaped from their benches to their new stations, preparing to unfurl the great sails of Terribilis. Ready, the crew reported. Full sail, J.W. ordered, and then her canvas flew and filled, the lofty dragon figurehead cutting the sea like a sword. Turn us before the wind, Red. Aye, sir, Red Greybeard replied. He was a stalwart, stocky marine with almost legendary strength. His nickname was Squirrel, but how he got that name is too long of a tale to tell at the start of a dangerous voyage. And the footnote says that before the wind is the sailing condition, when the vessel is headed in the same direction as the wind. From Lane's How to Sail, Complete Handbook of the Art of Sailing. Okay. Acklon recovered his jacket from Ensign Green. "As you were, Ensign." "Aye, sir," he replied. "Well done, J.W. Please carry on. Lead us out and plot our course, east by southeast, to the rally point. I will take over once the remaining fleet is under sail." "It is really a fine day, sir." "Yes," Acklon agreed, slapping him on the shoulder. "It certainly is." One by one, all 14 ships of the 11th unfurled their sails as they reached the open sea. Sailing in line before the wind, they rose and fell with the swells, looking like nothing other than the tall finned back of the great serpent. Arch Magi. There were many battle-ready wizards scattered across Tempest, but there were none more revered or whispered about than the one assigned to defend Terribilis. Lord Guy Gax was a pioneer of innovative magic, and some said that there were no spell formula or schools of magic unknown to him. In short, he was the most powerful human wizard ever known to have existed. Rarer still was the man capable of boasting truthfully that Lord Guy was one of his greatest friends and allies. And yet, Acklon was that man. And of course, Lord Guy Gax is Gary Gygax of Dungeons & Dragons, who is a star of my show. Okay. Lord Guy's quarters were well situated, beneath the broad archer's tower, just forward of the heart of the ship. The entrance to his cabin was on the main deck, flanked on both sides by stairs that ascended the tower, thus providing additional protection during times of war and extreme weather. Acklon did not bother to knock, knowing that his arrival was expected. "Good to see you, Admiral." "Good to see you, Lord Guy." Guy was standing behind a grand desk, bolted strongly to the deck. Nautical charts and global maps were scattered about it, but he was concentrating his attention on only one in particular. Dark-haired and stocky of build, his smile was broad and welcoming. His hands were thick and strong, more like a carpenter's than a sorcerer's. But in this case, looks were deceiving. "I see that you are focusing on the Rift Waters channel off of Alulu. The currents are tricky there." "I am more concerned with the stark miles that we must cross before we get there, Acklon. We will be several days' sail away from any shore. The Endrian pirates rarely sail this far south, and our own 7th Fleet protects Alulu from Jade Harbor. If not the currents, what more do you fear?" "It is my job to protect the ship from the unseen, Admiral," Lord Guy said, while drawing his pipe from his pocket. Packing it full, he lit it with the flame from one of the desk candles. "Let us be frank. We both know that this is no ordinary voyage." "Then you must know that the Queen intends this to be our last." Lord Guy sipped upon his pipe and then took a break from it. "It is as I expected. The Grand Magi is fully in league with her. He and I have not always been on friendly terms. His lieutenants stole many of the items that I invented, with no credit given to me save their treachery. No doubt they intend to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. We are responsible for a great flock, and I intend to save as many of them as I can. With your help, I believe that we can come up with a plan to thwart the Queen's designs, and even to fool the Grand Magi himself." Lord Gax was pleased to hear it, and his grin broadened. "Then let's get to work. There's no time to waste." Pulling up a chair, they studied the open waters to come. "We rendezvous with the convoy at Alulu. I suspect that the Queen's plan involves something vastly more difficult than a mere escort mission. Either we will be ambushed far from home, or some other betrayal will befall us. I agree. When we have finished here, I will consult the Oracle Stone, and see if there are any whispers of what is to come in the River of Time." They conversed for some time, studying the charted waters of off Hama and Narunga, the unconquered Isle of Ostia, and mountainous Sicily, where Dragonian forces routinely skirmished with Firmish troops for control of the island. They knew that there was little that they could do without more clues, but they were determined to do what they could. Alulu's islands waited, and little more, and likely more secrets as well. The Oracle Stone. Lord Gygax knew that the hour was nigh, and the need for knowledge never greater. Extinguishing his pipe, he rested it inside of the deep sea clamshell that served as his ashtray. Breathing deeply, he rose to his full height. Stretching his arms wide, he yawned, drawing in still more air. Adjusting the waist belt of his robe, he thoughtfully traced one of the silver-laced runes of protection on it. Laughing to himself, he realized for the first time that the only thing resting on his body that was not magical in nature was his very own skin. In packing for this voyage, he had left nothing of value behind, save a letter to his steward containing his own will. Smiling at the irony of his own fate, he reached for his belt pouch. Lifting its hourglass-shaped golden clasp, he reached into its confines. Within it, an extra-dimensional pocket existed, which allowed him to store vast quantities of modest-sized items with little concern for weight. The magic of the pouch was such that whatever item he willed would rise to his waiting hand. Just how many treasures resided in his bag, no one truly knew. It was likely that he himself had forgotten many of them. Focusing his mind, he summoned the Oracle Stone. Instantly, he felt the rock meet his palm, as if placed there by some unseen servant. Removing the egg-shaped stone, he held it between his hands and stood for a moment, feeling its weight. Maybe 20 pounds, it was identical in size and shape to the eggs of the tall wild birds of Shamroon. Only this one was petrified blue, and streaked through with white quartz, as if a lightning bolt had formed it. Placing it on a cloth cushion on his desk, like those used to hold brass bells, he rested his hands on either side of it. And because of the length of time I have to read, I'll have to stop here at the top of page 62. That's where we'll begin episode 8 with Lord Gygax completing his reading using the Oracle Stone. So you may have gathered that I have taken some characters from history, from Hollywood, the creator of Dungeons & Dragons. There's a lot of surprises in this book. There's Chuck Norris is in there, David Carradine, Kirk Douglas, John Wayne, all in aliases, close aliases. So it should be quite exciting when we get to those parts. All right, have a great night. Take care. Bye-bye.